As part of our internal analysis for market planning and analysis, let's discuss the notion of creating value with a competitive advantage. Who in the world am I? Ah, that's the great puzzle. That's from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. And that is one of the great puzzles for all organizations as they go down the planning process. Who are we? And how do customers see us? And what do we want to be when we grow up? Then I have a quote here, of course, from Aristotle: knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Then I have a quote here from Knute Rockne, the famous 1920s and 30s Notre Dame football coach: build up your weaknesses until they become your strong points. Of course, to do that, you have to be able to identify what your weaknesses are. Success is achieved by developing our strengths, not by eliminating our weaknesses. Of course, remember, the goal of the internal analysis is to identify and assess our strengths and weaknesses relative to the competitors. And you want to really assess your strengths and weaknesses that are crucial to your customers in terms of you adding value to your offerings and your customers seeing that value and therefore buying your products. And as we had said earlier on in our presentations on the internal analysis, this is difficult to do well. All right, so to be successful in the long run, a firm must have a competitive advantage. And we might define competitive advantage as something that we do that nobody else can do, something we can do better than anyone else, or something that we do that no one else will do. It's a reason to buy a good or service or experience rather than someone else's. And so a competitive advantage is something that makes our product, our good, our service, our experience unique in a way that adds value to our customers. Some way in which we are unique in a way that adds value to our customers. The essential elements to drive competitive advantage are resources, capabilities, and core competencies. So let's discuss each of these in turn. All right, and the way that this works is that resources mesh with distinct competencies and drive distinct competencies, and capabilities to drive distinct competencies, which result in a cost advantage or a differential advantage that is in some way a competitive advantage that adds value to our goods or services or experiences for our customers. So this is the model of a competitive advantage. So resources. Resources are inputs into a firm's production process, such as capital, equipment, skill of individual employees, patents, finance, and talented managers. If you watch the TV show that is on one of the science-related channels, it's called How Is That Made? And they'll show you how certain products are made. And in many cases, as they showing you how things are made, they show the equipment that's being used, that maybe this is the only organization it has, but they also will show the skill of individual employees in being able to use that equipment to produce something that other people can't produce. So types of resources include tangible resources. Those are the assets that can be seen and quantified. And then there are intangible resources like the organization's commitment, networks, organizational culture that we talked about before, reputation, intellectual property rights, trademarks, copyrights, once again, patents. By themselves, resources do not create a strategic advantage for the firm. Instead, they have to be mixed with other things. Capabilities. Capabilities are the capacity to perform activities to achieve a desired end state. The primary base for a firm's capabilities is the skills and knowledge of its employees, but it also might be the processes that they have developed over time. When I lived in Cedar Falls, Iowa, I went over one time and got a chance to view um, the I'm sorry, it was in Madison, Wisconsin. I got a chance to view the Oscar Mayer hot dog manufacturing facility. And it's very fascinating to see how they manufacture hot dogs, because it is not so much the skills and knowledge of its employees, but it was their ability to have specific recipes and specific processes to make hundreds of thousands of hot dogs a day. In essence, the capabilities are things that we know how to do that create value for customers. Sometimes we refer to this notion as a learning curve. That is, the longer you produce something, the better you get at producing it. That's called a learning curve, as opposed to an economy of scale. Just because the firm has the capacity to perform an activity, it does not mean it has a competitive advantage. An example, in many cases, the consumers do not know or care how something is made, but rather simply how it performs. And I have here an example of a groundwater absorption software. Um, Many years ago, when I was teaching an MBA class, we had a professor, which I will not name, from the College of Engineering, and he had developed a groundwater absorption software package that would show, for instance, if you had some sort of contaminated things like a tanker truck spilled on the interstate, their software would sort of identify what would happen to that spill, where the fuel would go, and how it would get into the groundwater, and where it would get into the groundwater. And so we were marketing that. Our MBA class was designing a marketing program for that. And when we had talked to him, he said, "This is extremely unique. This is the only groundwater absorption software out there." So we were working on the project for about 3 weeks, and one of my students, and this is, by the way, when in the early stages of the internet, we're searching the internet. There was Google searches, but it was nowhere near as sophisticated as it is now. And one of the MBA students came to class one night and said, "Let me show you guys this." And so he goes over to the computer and he shows us a website that sold different types of groundwater absorption software. There must have been 30 different versions of it. And so we then brought the professor who had designed this particular groundwater absorption software over to our class, and we showed this to him. And he said, "Oh yeah, yeah." He said, but my software is completely different because it uses a different algorithm." And our students were looking at him, and then they looked at me, and then they looked at him, and then they looked at me, and I went, gave him the old "go ahead and ask." And the fact is that he thought, since he had a different algorithm to make the calculations, that made it a completely different software. And the truth is that the end users of the software don't care about the algorithms. They just simply care about how accurate the results are. And this is just one example of sometimes people thinking that since they have a different process, they've got something that people are going to want. And they only want things that help them do their job. All right, and then we have core or distinct competencies. A core or distinct competencies are those resources and capabilities that serve as sources of a competitive advantage for the firm over its rivals. That is, the core or distinct competencies must create or result in a cost or differential advantage. That is, they have to make a product that is the same as all the rest and cheaper, or different in some way that adds value. Not all resources and capabilities result in core competencies. Many suggest that firms should identify and concentrate on only 2 or 3 or 4 core competencies. A core competency is something that the firm does well and meets meets the following three conditions. It provides customer benefits. It's hard for competitors to imitate, and it must be leveraged to produce multiple products and in multiple markets. A core competency can take various forms, including a technological subject matter or know-how, a reliable process, or close relationships with customers or suppliers. It must also include product development or culture, such as employees' dedication to modern business theories. Modern business theories suggest that most activities are not part of a company's core competencies, and those that aren't should be outsourced. I'm not a believer in that, but there are lots of people who do. If a core competency yields a long-term advantage to the organization, it's referred to as a sustainable competitive advantage. So a sustainable competitive advantage is a core competency that yields a long-term advantage to the company. All right, individual capabilities and core competencies. It's important to distinguish between individual capabilities and core competencies. Individual capabilities stand alone and are generally considered in isolation. Core competencies are more than traits of individuals. Core competencies are aggregates of capabilities where synergy is created that is sustainable, that has sustainable value and broad applicability. That is, they'll be able to apply to a number of different situations. That synergy needs to be sustained in the face of potential competition and must not be specific to just one product or market, but once again, must be applicable to multiple products and markets. So according to this definition, core competencies are harmonized intentional constructions. There are three tests for core competencies. Potential access to a wide variety of markets. The core competency must be capable of developing new products and services. A core competency must make a significant contribution to the perceived benefits of the end product. That is, it must result in some sort of value creation in the mind of the customer. And then core competencies should be difficult for competitors to imitate. For many industries, such competencies are likely to be unique, but but in many cases, what you think is unique, like the groundwater absorption software, are not unique. Identifying and building on core competencies. Core competencies must be distinctive. Capabilities that are done better than your competitors. Faster than your competitors, perhaps. More accurate than your competitors. Identifying core competencies is the key to developing a sound strategy. So at Westclox, we were all trained in horology, which is which we all went to horology school, which is the study of gear drives, precision gear drives. And so Westclox was really, our real expertise was we had the ability to understand and design and build precision gear drives. Now, there are lots and lots and lots of products that require precision gear drives, including key wound alarm clocks, which we were producing. And even in some cases, some versions of electric timepieces like wristwatches. The problem that we had at Westclox is we saw ourselves as being in the time business, and we didn't see ourselves as being in the precision gear drive business. And had we realized what our core competencies were, we could have broadened Westclox's product offerings into areas that were not related to time, that would have probably allowed us to be successful into the future. The challenge and strategy is identifying, developing, protecting, and deploying resource capabilities and core competencies. Capability-based strategies are based on the notion that internal resources and core competencies derived from distinct capabilities provide a strategy platform that underlies a firm's long-term profitability. And of course, then the evaluation of these capabilities begins with the company's capability profile, which examines the company's strengths and weaknesses in 4 key areas: managerial, marketing, financial, and technical. We all sort of get that. So there's a lot of technical stuff in that particular lecture, but the bottom line here is this, that what are the sources of an advantage for the firm in an industry? There are physical resources, reputation resources, organizational resources, capabilities, and core competencies, financial resources, capabilities, and core competencies, informational resources, and technology resources, capability, and core competencies. And as a result, we always like to use the acronym PROFIT to explain the concept of competitive advantage for an organization.